Welcome, one and all. My name is Dennis Minsky, and I've been honored to be involved here for the last few years. I'm not sure why. I guess I'm honorary Portuguese by this time. But I'm going to be the MC and just invite people up here. But in exchange for that role, I get to read a little something of my own, and so I will. And I see the mean age out here is somewhere in the category. Some of you might remember Cookie's Tap. Yeah. So yeah. So I wrote a little thing about Cookie's Tap. I'll read some of it to you, not all of it. Um, and then we'll get on with the real readers. So sometimes a restaurant is more than just a restaurant. Sometimes it speaks for the people it serves, the time and place in which it exists, the community it represents. Cookie's Tap, in all its later iterations, is just such a place. To situate Cookies, we need to go back to the mid-19th century when the first waves of Portuguese immigrants, mainly from the Azores, began arriving in America. Many came to Provincetown, destined for the whaling industry that prevailed at that time and the fishing enterprises that coexisted with it and then followed. Men arrived first, then women and children. Families were started in town as well. By the turn of the 20th century, the Portuguese community accounted for at least 40% of the town and had its own church. People from Portugal continued to arrive in Provincetown into the early decades of the new century. Like all immigrants, they looked for reminders of their homeland as they settled into a new one. Cookie's Tap was a first stop. Frank Friday Cook bought the building at 133 Commercial Street in 1934, redid the floors, set up a bar, and opened for business a tavern with food. It was also something of a forum for fishing news, family events, reports from the old country, and of going on in town. Here, amidst so much that was new, people took comfort in their traditional cuisine. I'll skip here. The menu was headed Mother's Home-Cooked Portuguese Specialties and featured fava beans, stuffed sea clams, squid stew, kale soup, and seasonally galvanized tinkers, which you all know, marinated baby mackerel. The most expensive item I found on an undated menu was marinated fresh tuna, $4.55. That was high. I saw no lobster or scallops. You could also find more unusual dishes at the bar some days when regulars brought in rabbits fresh off the dunes or fishermen brought in trash fish. Those items were usually on the house. It would be criminal to write about Cookie's Tap without an emphasis on its famous squid stew. Here's a quote from Howard Mitchum. Cookie's is one of the few restaurants in New England that still makes a good Portuguese squid stew. It's becoming a lost art. And then he says, a good Portuguese would walk 2 miles through a howling nor'east gale just to wrap himself around a hot bowl of squid stew. Cookie's Tap was early on considered a fisherman's hideaway with no women allowed, but it exemplified an important aspect of Portuguese culture. The women were primary forces. Have some women out here, I think. Movers and shakers. Not only Clara, but her granddaughter Valentina Cook Wheeler, and others like locals and sisters Susan and Mary Jo Avalar. Entering the rather unassuming building, finding a seat at the beautiful black mahogany bar, Ordering a beer and a dish of fava beans, 35 cents. Find something for 35 cents now. Couldn't get a straw for your soda for that. A bowl of kale soup or a squid stew or a stuffed clam, taking in the atmosphere, felt like being in a different country. It was exhilarating to listen to the talk, scan the old yellowed photographs on the walls, most of fishing vessels and some of the heroes that went out on them. I remember one photo, and you all do too, of a 270-pound halibut towering over old Frank Cook, who caught it with a hand line off Wood End in 1890. And then there would be Howard Mitchum, chef, artist, and writer, holding forth from his office in the booth by the window, his unmistakable loud and broken speech, and his frenetic scribbling of notes, and his obvious joy of life. And then he went on to Old Reliable, of course. So that's all I'll read right now. But, Cookie's Tap became Lorraine's. It was Gallerani's, Lorraine's, and now it's the June Bar. But, wow, what a place. What a place, Cookie's Tap. I miss it. Anyhow, thank you for listening to that. So we're going to have our first reader here. That will be Bill Fields. Come on up, Mr. Fields.
Thank you, Dennis. I remember cookies well. My Uncle Wilbur, Philly, and Joe, and Dina, and all the cooks. We used to go out to Long Point on the weekends when you could still drive out there before the blizzard of '78. And we spent the weekend out there, many a weekend, in our tents. It was lovely. So, anyway, as some of you might know, I grew up here in Provincetown in the 60s and 70s. And growing up in Provincetown in the 60s and 70s, when you were of Portuguese descent, meant a couple of things. First, it meant you had a real relationship with the sea and the sky and the sand. Right? Secondly, you were going to grow up Roman Catholic. That's it. That being said, I'm a practicing Buddhist. So something that's nagged at me for years is I can't quite release or get rid of. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't quite get over the idea of God. And the 8 short poems that I'm going to read for you today are sort of a reflection on my relationship with God over the years. And anyway, the first one is Along the Garden. I have listened for you in the night's black stillness, in the frost that blankets the garden along the stony path. I have waited for you on benches, held together by webs of dreams and flowers of dewy rose hips. I have longed for you when the sun and the moon both danced across the winter sky, singing your name to me. Now you whisper softly, and the willowy branches proclaim what I have always known in garden webs and winter's frost. This next one is mindfulness. What then is God? A whisper on a bough that spurs the young starling to flight? The spring lilacs that hang low and fragrant, pressed against the late April breeze? A blade of grass to catch and hold the dew as a memory to his reflection? Or salted breath, unparted lips and tongue that marks the tide's change at daybreak. Perhaps God is all of these, or the things that touch us. Maybe none of them at all. Looking back, I perceived it at first as perfectly round, although I knew full well it bulged slightly at one end. An oddly cast reflection, akin to a shadow, adorned its surface. So it was that this drop of water slid playfully down the foxglove, falling from its flower that splashed onto the ground, sending up 100 small droplets against the morning sun. Tiny spider eyes, frantically searching their hungry carriage, only to meet the muddy ground. And I asked God what reflection they carried to their end, fully knowing the answer already. Awakening. The sun not yet risen, the earth smells fresh and sweet. The faintest of raindrops falls cold on my face. Were I deaf and blind, I would know this moment, this quiet shrine, this half-light, a feeble candle, lit to entice a God still asleep. Sweet the incense that scents this path, nave and transept worn in the earth by feet long since past. The sun, still not risen. Damp soil beneath my feet, the smallest of birds picks hard at my heart, while I, deaf and blind, struggle to know this moment, that it awakens in me the seeds I deny. Gray. I am gray, soaking into concrete towers, too wet for the crosses that sit astride their desperate caps. Gray as prayers mounting the clouds in hurtful skies, chilled to the marrow, aching and dull. Forever watching what lies wounded beneath the immaculate, the unapproachable, the pure. And gray atop these dawn heaps, my repentance lies draped, cold before the sun. Christ is gray, a steel needle in a bowl of holy water. Causeway. I know you. I've seen your face. But your name, it's so close, so near, like my own skin sunk into my bones. And your face, the face of a crying infant, squirming beneath some agonal breath of sorrow, or perhaps fast asleep under the shade of a kind Bodhi tree. Yours, the name, scrawled on ancient cloths and whispered to the lips of the needy and dying. The face I've seen 1,000 times, and always skin and flesh, the treasures of mothers. And sometimes, just sometimes, atrocities, pounded flat by jackboots, made into lampshades and the binding of books. And for all this, your name isn't important. must know us both. Dusk. When the red sun touches the sea, all the birds stop their singing. Even the breeze ceases to blow. Quiet folds me up. My heart can rest now. The day's work done. Lilacs surrender their perfume. And God pauses for breath, surveying the day. In dusk he considers tomorrow's tumult. Smiling softly, he and I await the dawn. And this last one, the inspiration for it is just something I can't explain. I think we all have these moments in life where we can't say why it sticks in our head. But this is any one of 100 days in any given summer when I was a kid, screwing around at the end of Race Road near Manny Phillips Trailer Park. Anyway, this is a pond in Provincetown. How hushed the noon breeze. How fleeting and cloaked in muted silence are the summer dragonflies still atop an August pond. If I were to ask God for some small sweetness, some prelude of paradise to remember at my end, it would be this day. The quiet comings and goings in the warm sun of small sacred creatures couched amid the cattails and fragrant lilies. An instant to carry along into the great silence.
Fantastic. You describe yourself as deaf and blind in one of those pieces, and I would beg to differ with you. I think you see further than most of us, and it was very, very enlightening, very uplifting. And I'm sure we have uplifting ahead of us now. This is ridiculous for me to have to introduce one Peter Cook. It's like telling you what your own name is. Peter Cook is somebody I admire and responsible for most of us being in this room, and he's kept the voice of old Provincetown going, and will continue to do so. Let's hear from Peter Cook now.
Thank you, Billy. I missed you last year. Here. Well, everybody knows I'm not a show-off or a braggart or anything like that. Don't touch this mic. My son will have a fit. That's his. He's a videographer back there. Don't touch that one. Well, I just have to start out by saying, I'll quote an old friend of mine, Rodney Dangerfield. What a crowd! What a crowd! I want to just say one thing is I was hearing about Cookie's Tap. And Dennis probably doesn't know this, but the founder, Frank Cook of Cookie's Tap, was my father's brother. And the man that you talk about, Frank Cook, with a 270-pound halibut, was my grandfather's brother. So it's kind of fun to listen to you telling your story. Before I begin, I got to mention that my niece Debbie and my nephew Chris traveled all the way from Minnesota to be with us today. Thank you. They're right here in the front row. Chris was here last year at the reading, and he just had to come back again to listen to his Uncle Pete. I'm going to read you today about Guilfoyle's Farm. The farm located on Bradford Street Extension is where you would find me. I loved it there. My mom could look out our kitchen window and see the roof of the big red barn, a short walk from our house. Farm days were an adventure and a good place to play. Kids helped with chores for no pay, but we enjoyed being around the farm animals. All those familiar smells, cows and bulls and horses and sheep, all kept in the barn or in the outside pastures, chicken coops for the chicken yard or out back behind the barn. A narrow dirt road led to the lowland pig pasture. A two-story building provided shelter for the pigs, and the upper floor was packed with bundles of paper. A leftover practice from the wartime was for families to leave bundles of paper in front of their houses for men to pick up in trucks for the paper collections. You got to be really old to remember that. When two big draft horses, Pete and Bill, were in the enclosed corral, we climbed the fence to get onto the horses and rode them around. Two older men, Charles Porter and Harris Adams, were in charge of everything at the farm. Two older boys, Richard Roderick and Richard Flores, worked at the farm and kept us kids in line. They taught us what to do and kept us safe from getting hurt. The draft horses we played with were work horses used to pull wagons and other working machines. One rule for kids was to stay away from the machines with the mower blades that were used to cut the tall grass out in the outback fields. One day Richard Flores cut the tip of his finger off while handling a blade. That got our attention. When the tall grass was cut, dried, and ready to be gathered, Richard Roderick drove the horse team to the hay fields. He attached a machine called a hopper to the back of the horse-drawn wagon, and the horses pulled the wagon, and the hopper conveyor fed the hay up into the wagon. I got to go along, and I watched everything they did. Richard Roderick always smiled as he talked. One day, he handed me the reins and spoke through his talking smile and said, "Here you go, Pard. You've been watching and wanting to drive for a long time." That first time I drove the team was a very special day for me. I loved everything about those days, and I'll always remember the people that showed me the ways of working at the farm. Richard brought his sister Helen along one day. Excuse me. She and I rode in the wagon going out to the fields to collect the hay. She was a big person, older than me, and laughed easily. We laughed and teased each other all the time. Richard made a noise in his cheek and got the horse's attention. The team's ears turned back. "Giddy up!" With a shack of the reins, the draft horses began to pull. The wagon lurched forward and bumped and jarred as the slack in the machinery tightened. Helen and I sat inside the wagon. She laughed, but I knew she was nervous. The hay began to fill the wagon. The floor quickly covered, and before long the hay quickly piled up. Richard yelled over the noise, "Helen, stay on top of the pile." With an effort, Helen did what she was told. The hay poured steadily out of the chute, and the pile grew higher. Helen and I were nearly covered when Richard yelled again, "Helen, climb up, climb up." We laughed as we struggled to the top of the heap. When the wagon filled and the hopper left, left it behind for a future day's work, the two Richards stood behind the team of horses. Helen and I held on to each other to keep from falling off the top of the hay pile. She was so nervous, she became hysterical, sort of laughing and crying mixed together. Helen started chewing on the strands of hay and yelled, "Richard, I'm eating all the hay. There won't be any hay left by the time we get back to the barn." She made us all laugh. We arrived at the farm, and the wagon backed up under the open door of the hayloft, and kids waited with pitchforks to offload the hay, helping the men with their work and enjoying the fun. My best memories are connected to those farm days. Guilfoyle was close to my house, and I was allowed to go there on my own. The only rule was I had to be home before dark. Some days, if I was late and dusk approached, my mom walked up to the barn to find me. I brought vegetables home from the farm every day, and we picked carrots and potatoes and radishes and more, and I gathered them and rubbed the dirt off on my pants and ate the vegetables fresh out of the ground. We were allowed to bring milk home. I learned to hand milk cows. The barn cats waited by the cows for a squirt of warm milk. We aimed a shot of milk at the cat's mouth, but sometimes we aimed for the cats just for sport. I followed my mom's rules, but at times I just couldn't walk away, especially the days men arrived to shear the sheep. The sheep were led into a shearing pen where men waited with buzzing tools in hand. 2 by 2, the sheep were stripped of their coats. I couldn't leave the excitement until the shearing was finished, the wool was gathered and bagged, and the men had loaded their truck. Farm animals, vegetable gardens, and even the pigs kept my attention, but I especially loved the horses, Pete and Bill. Late one afternoon, a truck arrived, and one of the men told me Bill was going to the glue factory. I waited and watched as they loaded my horse friend Bill into the truck, and I cried my way home that day. It was dark when I saw my mom walking toward the barn looking for me. She asked if I was all right, but she already knew I was sad. I told her the horse was taken away. A few days later, another horse showed up named Tom. He arrived at the barn. I missed Bill, but before long, Pete and the new horse Tom became a great team. Pranks in the stampede. I enjoyed all the animals, except for the unfriendly bull. Inside the barn, he was kept in a separate area away from the other animals. He also had an outside pen of his own, and 2 doors to the outside pen slid open on rollers. Initiation pranks. When I was new at the barn, one of the bigger kids pulled my hat off and tossed it into the middle of the bullpen. Everyone laughed. "Go get your hat." They egged me on. I went through the fence and reached down to pick up my hat, and suddenly the big doors rolled open and out came the bull. He was after me. Luckily, I escaped in the nick of time, and the big kids had a good laugh. The sheep corral was another prank. I was told to go into the pen to feed the sheep, so I brought buckets of food into the pen. Excuse me. The sheep butted me all over the place. No one told me that I was supposed to lead the sheep out into the outside corral in the barnyard before bringing the food into the inside trough. The old saying, "Live and learn," rang true growing up in the farm. Another lesson learned was pig slaughtering days. First time it happened, a truck arrived with a picture of a pig on the side. The slaughtering men stepped out, but I had no idea what I was in for. Farm workers brought the pigs up from the narrow dirt road. I thought the men would put the pigs in the truck and take them away, but they were there to kill the pigs at the farm. I left there, ran all the way home, never got over seeing the men arriving in that truck to slaughter the pigs. Even so, I couldn't stay away from the farm for too long. Year after year, Richard Roderick taught me many things. We hitched a team of horses to the wagon, filled the wagon with manure, and delivered it throughout the town of Provincetown to people's yards for the vegetable gardens. Going down steep hills, the tracer chains came unhinged from the wagon. The horses stopped at the bottom of the hill. I climbed down and hitched the chains back, and before long I could climb down behind those horses and reattach those chains without Richard needing to stop the wagon. Johnny, me, in trouble. Is Jeannie Fields out there? Johnny is Jeannie's brother. I don't know what we were thinking or why we did it, but one day, just for fun, we let the pigs out of the pigsty. When we opened the gate, we thought it would be funny if a couple of pigs wandered out, but when we swung the gate open, all the pigs stampeded out through the gateway. We ran up the dirt road as fast as we could, and I yelled, "Johnny, the pigs are chasing us! The pigs are chasing us!" I swear the pigs chased us all the way home. I didn't see Johnny again for a few days. For a little while, we stayed away from the farm. That farm was a wonderful place to learn, pranks were played, but nobody ever got hurt. Johnny and I got into our share of mischief, but we loved being farm kids. We learned how to treat and take care of many different animals, and we kids learned to get along with each other and work together. The end of an era at Guilford. Eventually, new managers took over the farm. The business slowly drifted away from its roots. Horses were added, and the farm became a horseback riding stable rather than a dairy farm. No more wagon loads of manure would be delivered around town. The slaughtering of pigs came to an end. The big vegetable gardens grew smaller. Throughout my life, I've continued to return to the farm. Different local managers came and went. Earl Boisine Cabral was a friend of my father's, and he ran a riding stable there. My dad liked horses and enjoyed working there part-time. Another manager, Mr. Simmons, ran a riding stable there for some time, and I went to school with his daughter, Christine, and I was always welcome to the stable. The fun days were over, yet the memories and my love for Gale Force Farm of my youth remain with me forevermore. Now, at this stage of my life, looking back through time is something that has become my nature. In my recent research for this story, I learned about Frank Silva Alves. He was a fisherman, originally from the island of Pico in the Portuguese Azores. I was happy to learn that a fisherman from the Azores began Gale Force Farm so many years ago. Gale Force was one of 5 dairy operations that provided the local community with fresh milk. When I was a boy, Frank's son Joe Alves owned the farm. In 1934, Joe Alves assumed the sole control of the operation. I remember him, but I didn't see him very often. Back in his time, he grew his own feed for his livestock, and he kept a herd of 37 Guernsey and Holstein cows. When Gale Force Farm ceased operations, it marked the end of the last commercial dairy farm at the tip of Cape Cod. Today, Provincetown's last horse farm, which is a tiny fragment of Gale Force Farm as it once was, is for sale. An initial offer has been accepted. Dave Crone has owned the horse farm since 2015. He's a true horseman and gentleman who loves horses. He always welcomed me at his stable with an outstretched arm and a handshake. Visiting the farm is something I've done my entire life, and at 81 years old, that's a long time. I'm almost done. Be glad when I'm done. As fate would have it, as strange as life is, I had a recent stay at Cape Cod Hospital, getting discharged 2 days ago. I received a Facebook message from someone I never knew. Peter, I live in Centerville. Is there anything you need? I'm happy to bring it to you. She is Donna Silva. Her brief, is Donna here? Right there. Hi, honey. She's Donna Silva. Her brief message took the 2 of us on a family genealogy whirlwind that connected her to Frank Silva Alves of the island of Pico in the Azores, to Gale Force Farm. Along the way of life, Donna is related to my own Cook family of Prince Street in Provincetown. She's even connected to a member of the Marshall family who was buried in our Cook family plot. In an unmarked grave. And I am sure I'm the only person that knew of that unmarked grave. God works in mysterious ways. Donna is here with us today. I want to thank her from this podium for reaching out to me in my hour of need and the enjoyment we now share of going ahead through the days and back through the years. Another thing I'll mention is during our internet conversations, Donna emailed me a story written by Jan Kelly about the history of Gale Force Farm. It is in a previous 2009 edition of the Portuguese Festival book, and Jan's article is a great history. I'm sure you will be interested in reading. What I read you today is a genuine Peter Cook story. My thanks to Carol LeDuc, another lover of horses, for keeping this tradition of our Portuguese prose and poetry reading alive. Thanks to Nancy Silva for putting our Portuguese festival book together and getting it published for all of us to enjoy. A special thank you to my son Peter J. Cook and his family. He is our videographer engineer today, and he will edit and produce a professional film version of today's Portuguese festival reading, making it available for PTV and YouTube and various venues preserving our Provincetown's history. Thank you all for being here today. Enjoy your week and happy blessed Saudades.
See that? That's what Peter Cook does. Another hunk of history from Provincetown. And I'm sure he's got a lot more hunks of history to deliver in the years to come, and we look forward to those. But I learned a lot, and now I will never get that image out of my mind of a herd of pigs chasing Peter Cook down the road. I think Gabby Rillo is next, is that correct? I think so. Gabby Rillo. The Rillo family is a great part of Provincetown history, and Gabby's a beautiful writer, and I look forward to hearing from her.
Yeah. Thank you, Dennis. I hope I'm going to do all right. I left my glasses at home. At least I brought the poems. I'd like to just say as well, I repeat all the gratitudes that Peter just gave to those that make today this event possible, but the whole Portuguese festival. It's a wonderful one. I extend my stay just to be here. And I do want to say, Dennis, I have a little cookies tapped thing too, because, I mean, I know people mostly think the Rillos were East End people, but I started off the West End, right across from Cookies, at 130 Commercial Street, in a very tiny building. And Cookies was our living room for various reasons. And Joe Cook, when he was probably in his early to mid-20s, I was 5, he proposed to me. I was so excited to know, who I was going to spend the rest of my life with. The only thing was, he ended up marrying my babysitter that fall, Fifi. And also, I thought that, I really thought I had Portuguese blood in me. I must, right? It was like Aguirre Souza back and Brenda Ferreira on the other side, the west of us, and Bunny and Franny Carroll, and everybody was Portuguese. Why else would I be there, right? Okay. Gabby without glasses. Does anybody have a pair of readers I could borrow? Oh, that's great. Oh, this is great. Home. This place of shifting skies where draggers push beyond the cresting waves. Oh, I just want to say, please, hold any applause, if you're inclined to applaud, till after I do the whole reading, right, rather than each individual poem. This place of shifting skies where draggers push beyond the cresting waves through early morning fog to the outer banks in hopes of a good week's haul, where a father strapped his drowned son's body to the weirs while he swam to shore for help, where too many fishermen, brothers and sons, are lost forever, betrayed by the seas of their youth. This place of unforgiving storms where the tide pulls in and holds you fast till all those empty promises get you to hoist up anchor, grab the oars, and pull hard against the waters. You row beyond the point, look back and hear the echoes of Jimmy Peak shouting, "Strawberries!" fresh strawberries from his pickup as he rolls along Front Street. Scary Jack's old fire truck bell calling out, fresh cod, flounder. Kids' squeals and laughter, cadence of Portuguese woven through a chorus of memories, silhouettes in the mind's horizon. It is this place to which you forever return, to forget and to remember. Winter kids. Every September, the chestnut trees would form their pods. We'd keep an eye for the first to fall, burnishing that brown nut against our flannel sleeves. The summer shops had taken in their awnings and battened their doors. It was our town now, us winter kids. Red Rover, let Agnes come over, echoed in the schoolyard with all the jump rope rhymes we'd carried from grade to grade. First year with Miss Dennis, music with Miss Welch, who sat her huge self-side saddle across our desks and one by one made us sing, Little Pussy Mitts and Little Doggy Spitz lived in a house together. Fourth grade's Mrs. Al's began each morning with the Lord's Prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, then played her piano with patriotic flair as we sang Halls of Montezuma and Anchors Aweigh. Joe Marshall's sold pomegranates we shared at recess, our faces red with stains, ignorant of worlds that could grow such fruit. Cold to the touch, a black iron fire escape was our jungle gym, where we'd swing and climb till Miss Sylvia's ring of the handbell called us back to class. After school, we'd cut across Freeman Street, and if not enough time for a game of jacks, we'd shoot baseball cards against the wall, winner take all. Our bathing suits were tucked away, the roller skates would soon come out, and that click-clack of metal wheels would carry us through town, over cracks in the sidewalk, against the cool edge of autumn air. We did not ask for more. Cattails. We call them cat nine tails, growing there in the swamp along Depot Road, walking through the muck we called quicksand, making ourselves scared. We'd pick those tails, fuzz them all up, and blow them to the wind, down where Old County and Depot Roads cross near Fat Francis's shack. He had 26 dogs, Fat Francis. Everyone just called him Fat. He'd drive his jalopy into town most every day, though never with a dog. His looks were something you could never forget. Denim overalls, baggy everywhere except where his stomach stuck out, straight out and pointed like he had a huge rock in there. A red bandana hanging out of his back pocket, always wearing his black stovepipe hat. A big old cigar forever hanging from his mouth, smelled something awful, but it was his smell, and we knew better than to poke fun. We just held our breath. He'd stand around Lopez Square in the center of town, pontificating with his sandpaper voice about one thing and another. People stopped and listened. We were told Fat was extra smart when he died. Tom Kane's column told how Fat had run for town selectman a bunch of times, was head postmaster in Truro for years, in a time back before we ever knew. Guess he must have been some smart. The main thing about Fat, though, as far as we kids were concerned, was that he was a townie, and that meant nothing terrible would happen to him, like going hungry or not having a place for him and his dogs. The town took care of its own, and that gave a kid a kind of security, made you feel confident when you blew the cat and nine tails to the wind. Winter. I know winter well. I can smell it coming around the corner 100 days away. I know its winds, how they howl down the chimneys and beat across the street, pushing loose leaves like frightened critters scattering from the shadow of a swooping hawk. I know that cold chill that pulls over town as we hunker down to the task of parceling out the summer stash of cash bit by bit, hoping it will last until ice cracks and spring begins to show some promise. I know winter, how it broke my parents' spirit each year as they tried to squeeze from it enough to keep us warm and bring a living to the table. how it takes from this town those who can no longer hold their backs against the wind for one more year to fight against its frozen fists. I know winter well, and every time I catch the first smell of it, as the leaves start to turn and the squirrels move a little faster over the hardening ground, I catch that hint, and there is a tightening of muscle against bone so strong that for a moment I am 9 years old again. Misperceptions. It is my 5th birthday. My father's hand wrapped securely around mine. We're headed home in the West End. As we stand on Front Street, about to cross Ryder, he stops and looks up to his right. How about we climb the monument for your birthday, he asks with excitement, pointing to the familiar monolith with its rectangular footholds. As my eyes follow his finger, I quickly decline. I'll carry you on my shoulders, he encourages. Always enjoying the shoulder rides, I reconsider. Looking up once more, I picture my adventurous father with me balanced on his shoulders, hands clasped around his forehead, scaling King Kong-like up the exterior of this massive granite tower. I decline more firmly. We cross Ryder and continue on home, where a cake with 5 candles provides my relief. It is many years later that I learn our monument has an interior with nearly 200 steps to its outlook. What my child mind saw as footholds are the barred windows. I don't know if I ever told my father of my misperception, but we never climbed the monument together. My loss. My red balloon. All memory is sepia tone except for a red balloon dancing at the end of a string held in my 4-year-old hand. The most joyous thing ever, this high-flying ball tugging gently against my hold, pulling me into play, my arms swaying in dance, until a gust of wind pulls the string through my grip. The balloon zigzags into the sky, and my heart flies away. What you gave to me, I took. Sand on tiny feet, coarse enough to tickle on the run. Conch wrinkles at low tide clinging to rocks, the squeaking of seaweed pods, hermit crabs skittering across the flats, waiting the tide's turn. The sound of a taut rope cracking at high tide tethered to a dory's rise and fall. Gulls' cries above draggers pulling into dock. The smell of hot sidewalks drenched by summer rain, a waft of fish guts in the evening air. I took the wet, salty edge of you. I took it in and out. I took it all the way, and over and over. I return, but like the myth of the Selkie, I cannot stay. And I'll end with Hot July. Hot July. I just smelled fried fish, and I remember my fresh hips falling from side to side, bare feet stepping softly on the hot sidewalk, short dress cuffing my forming thighs as I moved discreetly sassy down the street. A don't bother me miss on important business. Going to the post office for my father, 5 shoeboxes under my arms. I'm going to mail these sandals COD. Bring in the money. I moved discreetly sassy, catching wafts of last night's beer from barroom doors, cotton candy and saltwater taffy, and a street full of summer smiles. I moved sassy with 13 years under this belt my mother made, burnished with her cracked hands, brown with shoemaker's dye. Moving sassy, eyes straight ahead, a don't bother me miss, hoping to catch a promise of something else. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you.
Wow. tightening of muscle across bone, I am 9 years old again. Wow. Incredible. Hey, is Russell Sanderson here? I didn't see him. I think he's not. Speak now. No. Well, we'll try to find somebody. Maybe it'll be Mel Joseph. I really am looking forward to this one. Mel Joseph. Another authentic Provincetown voice.
Well, keeping with when my father left home at 15, he took up residence behind that little restaurant everybody keeps talking about today. It was a little tiny little shack that air came through, and in late October when the wind was just whistling through and he was freezing to death, he went across the street and spent the winter with his best friend Dickie Cook. That's my memory. This story is titled Crime Pays. Morning League whet our appetite for sports. Our love of innocent competition would be carried over to the Watson's Court alleyway, with pitcher and catcher's dream games, or with us in rundowns between Jimmy's older brothers and their friends. We would be in a pickle. As I look back on it, we were like their pets. Jump, Jimmy. Roll over, Melvin. But we loved it, and it made us tough because they abused us and made us come back for more. They'd pop the ball off the back of our heads or shoulders, and we'd flop to the ground and imitate the writhing of our TV sports heroes. Live sports on TV in the 50s were surreal, black and white, slightly out of time and tune, and more fuzz than clarity. The steps of the runners looked choppy, and the cameras were slow to react to the play. The Delpy brothers could always pull out the necessary sports hardware, whether it was a catcher's mitt, a chest protector, shin guards, or catcher's mask. If we needed a football, several would appear. A white one with black stripes, a plain cowhide leather one, a small one that fit perfectly in a 7-year-old's hands. There would be shoulder pads and helmets, or old high-top cleats, a basketball, and even old PHS varsity jerseys. The Dalpies were good boys, but they had a bit of the mischief in them. These things they had stolen were going to be discarded anyway, so they felt, why not? Why not to us? Stealing nonetheless. I had an old 5-fingered glove from my Uncle Put's high school baseball days back in the late 30s. It had 5 stubby fingers, and the pocket was worn so much that I used an old sponge that I had nibbled to the right size with a pair of scissors as padding. The fingers were loosely tied together with floppy leather laces, having been tied and retied many times over. A classic mitt you might have seen on Marty Marion or Ty Cobb, wear from early in the century. Jimmy had his pick of several catcher's mitts from the Dalpies pilfering from the high school equipment room. We played our imaginary pitcher-catcher games night after night in the Watson's Court alleyway, dreaming that one day we'd be Johnny Roseboro and Sandy Koufax on the Dodgers, and Yankee and Whitey from the Yankees, or better still, the local Red Sox duo of Bob Tillman and Bill Mom Bocat. These games would only be interrupted by a cool George Lima rolling his candy apple red 57 Thunderbird down the alleyway. Jimmy knew he was going to be a catcher from day one. He loved the whole ritual of getting dressed up in a catcher's armor. He'd tug and pull the shin guards on, strap on the chest protector, and finally turn the cap around so he could place the mask on his head. Put the mitt on, tap it several times, as if to beat the leather into submission so it would obey him. Then he'd fold his hand and tuck the glove under his left arm and raise his right arm with his fist closed and yell, "No outs!" to the imaginary fielders behind me. He'd crouch down, bob a bit, fidgeting for the right position, and say, "Come on, Manny, right here, Manny. He's all yours. Hum, baby, hum, baby." Hour on end, he'd place a single finger down between his legs and signifying, "I throw him a fastball," with two fingers for a curve. I'd stare down the bill of my cap and go into the windup, and whop, the sound of the ball meeting the glove would resonate. We signed up for Little League that summer, but we didn't play much. We only got to practice, but we were on the same team, the White Sox. We loved the coach, Freeman Watson. He wanted us to call him Freeman, but none of us did because we were taught to respect our elders. So we settled on Coach. Jimmy, in his bold and brazen way, told Coach that Manny and me are a team, and with time that would be true. The White Sox wasn't a preferred team. The team of choice was the Indians. If your family was anybody in town, they could get you on the Indians team, and once you were there, you would be rewarded with the local Little League championships and places on the all-star teams, and on and on. It didn't matter to Jimmy that we were on the team that historically lost more games than it won. We were on the eve of our greatness, albeit a year away. For now, we'd watch and learn from the team's best pitcher, Bruce Blueberry Collins. There was nothing like the feeling of having supper and then rushing to pull on that scratchy cotton uniform over the stirrup of baseball socks. Straighten the navy blue cap, tuck your fingers over the crown and to raise the front more prominently. Scoop up the glove and head out the door of our Court Street apartment, onto the second-story porch, over the railing, down the tree to the alleyway below. I trot down the alley to Jimmy's house, and like the soulmates we were, I'd hit the hedge grove opening to his yard, exactly at the time he would be exiting into the alleyway. Off to the ball field, me with my circa 1930s mitt, and Jimmy with a catcher's mitt. Us to sit on the bench and dream. We drove for coins all summer and rounded up empties for a 2-cent return, a penny here, a nickel there, that never seemed to add up to enough to buy me a new glove from George Breyer's store. George Breyer's was our wishing well for all the things we couldn't have, all the things that those more fortunate could have, and the things we aspired to. Matchbox cars, water-propelled rockets, Roy Rogers 6 guns with holsters, and then there was the glove. We came to look at the glove as we had the most every day. They weren't set up in any organized display. They were dropped randomly into a 2x3 fish box, so we had to paw through the box to find the one I dreamt about. It wasn't very special by today's standards. It didn't have long, supple fingers and deep, responsive pocket. It was square and stiff and would take some time to break in, but that was the rite of passage. Half the fun and the responsibility of the ownership was that you made the glove yours by rubbing baby oil into the leather until your fingers and the glove were baby bottom soft. Repeatedly slap the ball in the mitt, and every night you would place a ball in the pocket and tie the glove closed and tuck it into bed with you. I wanted the glove so bad that it hurt, and this hurt was something Jimmy could see and feel. So in the Dalpy tradition, we concocted a plan to steal the glove. A plan of distraction and deception, a plan that we dreamed would be successful. The distraction. George Silver Breyer's store was more than just a toy store, and he was much more than just a proprietor. This little store on the corner of Court Street in Bradford was a mercantile, catering to all the needs of the neighborhood, from the cobbler's bench to the penny candy counter. Local fishermen brought in their work boots and waders to be repaired, and mothers would bring their children's school shoes in to have them resoled and healed, breathing new life into old leather and leaving the family's spare funds to better needs. The bunny bread truck generally came around the neighborhood to sell baked goods to the moms, but there was always the emergency need for a loaf of bread. I would always volunteer to go to Breyer's store, not so much for the bread, but to drool over the penny candy and ogle the toys I couldn't have. Jimmy and I spent a lot of browsing time at Breyer's, and we'd always leave saying, if we only had this or that. Mr. Breyer rarely looked up from his cobbler's bench behind the counter, but I suspected he had an eye on us. But it wasn't apparent to us. We felt invisible. Sometimes we'd be in the store for an hour and townspeople would come and go, either picking up their shoes or a pack of cigarettes, bread, sewing thread, or just a snack. Mr. Breyer would offer us a free penny candy choice, just one, from this side over, waving his hand in the direction of the less expensive and less popular candies. Sometimes we'd come back several times a day, and Mr. Breyer would be generous each time. We were welcomed fixtures in the store, and we felt he was our friend. And I'm going to have to take a drink, guys. The day we concocted the plan to steal my new glove, we didn't think about whether we would be taking advantage of our friend. We were driven by the need to have the glove. We were much too young to think that we were taking money out of Mr. Breyer's pocket. Did we know it was wrong? I'm sure on some level we knew it was wrong, but we had a need, and Jimmy had the plan. There were only 3 aisles in the compact store. The center aisles had the food, and the outer aisle on the wall had toys in the box containing the gloves. An adult's head could be seen above the aisles, but 7-year-olds could not. So Jimmy went to the counter and asked Mr. Breyer if he could have a candy, while I stood quietly in the outside aisle. There was a small open window to the side of Court Street and a flower box below the window ledge. Jimmy's distraction was working as I picked up the glove and slipped it quietly out the screenless open window and into the flower box. I then came around to the candy counter and stood there patiently, waiting for Mr. Breyer to offer me free candy, a shameless expectation. Was this a foolproof or foolhardy venture? Probably more foolhardy than foolproof. Someone could have been walking up the street as I was slipping the glove out the window, or a car could have passed by the store as it slowed for the intersection of Court and Bradford Street. Either one of these and more could have happened, but didn't. We picked out our confections and thanked Mr. Breyer and quickly turned our smirking faces away and bolted out the door. Once outside, my heart was visibly beating out of my chest as Jimmy slipped down the side street and casually scooped the glove and continued down Court and onto the beach across Front Street. I had walked one street over to Carver and then down to the beach. We rendezvoused behind the fire station under a small wharf. When I got there, Jimmy was already under the wharf and sitting with the biggest grin you could imagine and my bigger-than-life glove in his lap. I scrambled under the wharf on my hands and knees and grabbed him, and we began wrestling and laughing. Jimmy had already figured out our next move. He'd keep the glove for me. Nobody would notice another glove at the Delpy's house. I'd head out each day to meet Jimmy for our walk to Morning League, and he'd bring the glove, and I'd ditch Uncle Putt's glove in the hedge alongside the Catholic Church. The Lord would watch over it. The summer wore on, and more afternoons spent at the beach, some playing, some diving for coins. Early evening Little League games, followed by Coach taking us to the Dairy Queen for dillies, whether we won or lost. By summer's end, the glove looked worn, its fingers scuffed, the new leather darkened by baby oil and dirt, and now it could come home. I told my mother it was left behind at the ball field by an opposing player on a visiting Babe Ruth team, and Mr. Gavere had kept it for a while, made an inquiry or two, and gave it to me at season's end. A lie? Yes, but only a small one, I thought. And it put the finishing touches on our caper. I saw some trepidation in my mother's eyes, but no additional response. The glove had come home to its new owner. I still have the glove, and I will never get rid of it. Not so much for the love of the glove, but for the love of my friend that wanted so much for me to have it. Innocent, harmless thievery? Am I proud of this today? No, I am not. Not because of the right or wrong of it, but because Mr. Breyer was a good man, and we took advantage of his good nature and generosity. Maybe he knew we were taking advantage of his good nature and was okay with it. I'd like to think he was smarter than us in being older and wiser and thought the petty thefts weren't worth pursuing. All said and done, we did bad, and we would continue this for years to come, progressing towards more rewarding and more infamous adventures. I saw Mr. Breyer back in the mid-70s. He had closed the store in Provincetown and now was working in the shoe department at Puritan Clothing on Main Street, Hyannis. He had exchanged his flannel shirts and leather apron for a gray suit and tie and patent leather shoes. We exchanged highs and a handshake, and he asked how my mother was. I felt a bit of a need to apologize for the long-ago caper, but decided that it was better left unsaid. Thank you.
Mel, you're the nicest thief I know. What an incredible memory. I'm amazing. Every year.
Our next caper was to steal 66 packs from Nelson's Market.
That would be a step up.
The story's a little bit longer.
But we'll look forward to hearing it. I am looking forward to hearing from Lisa King next, a real historian, and I'm sure she has something special for us. My friend Lisa.
Hi, everyone. There has been a story that has caught my attention for many years about Manuel Caton, the first Portuguese man to settle here. And so I did some digging, and when you are looking up things in the retelling over the years, little things get changed, sometimes big things get changed. So what I try to do is go back to the original records and get the story there as best I can. What I've done is tried to recreate Emmanuel's journey to America. It's a historical fiction piece, but the names, the dates, everything are corroborated with censuses, birth certificates, death certificates. Reading up on Emmanuel, I actually found the original location, well, the location of where the Pilgrims are buried in town, the four Pilgrims. So that's my next venture. I want to tell you a little bit about Emmanuel Roll Down Caton. I've never figured out where he got that nickname, but it is listed as his nickname. It was after the turn of the century when Emmanuel Caetano left his home and family in Porto, Portugal. Life was difficult about this time as the country was impoverished by war with France. He was ready for an adventure like so many other boys his age and signed on to a merchant ship heading to America. The trade routes linked the Americas, Europe, and Africa and were fraught with much danger. Ships loaded with goods were up for grabs by vicious pirates hunting on the high seas. The days at sea seemed endless, plodding one after another in a slow march toward a new life. Emmanuel was fast asleep under an overturned dory on the deck when he was awoken by shouting and the crack and bang of a pistol piercing the morning silence. Thudding footsteps crossed the deck, followed by shrieks from the passengers and shouts from the crew defending their vessel. The clash of cutlasses rang loud as they cut down whoever stood in their way. Pirates roamed the Atlantic and violently took all that was in their path. The first pirate that has been documented off of Provincetown was in 1630. His name was Dixie Bull, and he was vicious, just very bloodthirsty. Okay, let me see. Young Emmanuel watched in horror as the evil men killed the captain and crew before making the passengers walk the plank one by one, hands bound behind their backs. He squinted his eyes shut, terrified, and repeated a whispered prayer. The Lord will protect you, over and over. Suddenly a hand grabbed his ankle and yanked him from safety. He was surrounded by the motley and dangerous crew which had taken over the ship. They stripped the vessel of all valuables, food, and anything else found useful before scuttling it. Making the boy their slave, they taunted the child to pass the time. He worked long days, had little sleep, and even less food, while being abused by the horrific men. When the pirate ship neared the treacherous bars off the backside beach, the anchor was dropped and two pirates rowed the ailing captain and Emmanuel ashore. The ship captain was near death, so Emmanuel was sent to find a doctor. It was too dangerous to have a pirate ship offshore, so Emmanuel watched as the vessel weighed anchor and sailed away, disappearing from view. The small Portuguese boy left the sick man on the shore and wandered weak, scared, cold, and crying, looking for help for his captain. He sat in the sand, drowning in despair, while the wind blew his tears away. Captain Gamaliel Bowley of Provincetown was traveling on a wagon over the beach to the Race Point settlement when he saw a small child crouched on the sand and approached him. He stretched out his large calloused hand, asking, "How you faring, boy? You seem to be in a bind." The boy looked up with pleading eyes. He understood little English. The child was able to lead Bowley to the sick man on the beach. Captain Bowley took the child and the sick man to the Race Point settlement on the beach, which was nothing more than shacks erected for shelter, gearwork, and storage. The pirate was taken to town to be cared for on a wagon that was going that way. When the day's work was done, the boy jumped on the back of Captain Bowley's cart and they began their slow trek through the dunes to Provincetown. They traveled on a well-worn path originally made by the natives who inhabited the land for thousands of years before the European settlers came. The ruts in the sand didn't inhibit the wide iron wheels on the cart from moving forward as it was pulled along by horsepower. Provincetown had about 800 residents during this period and was sparsely populated. No wharves would be built for another 25 years along the shore. It was considered a wild place where nothing grew from the sand, but the bounty of fish and fowl made it a busy place for commerce. When the pirate captain recovered, he told Emmanuel they would catch a packet boat to Boston and hop on the pirate ship near a place where they had in their predestined spot. Emmanuel demurred, and he said he would stay in Provincetown as he liked the place and the people. The captain left without him on the next boat. Young Emmanuel was taken to Gamaliel's home and placed in the care of his wife Temperance. He worked as a laborer to earn his keep. In Provincetown, he attended church services and became a bit of a zealot, most likely due to his childhood trauma. He was known for never missing a sermon, and he would fervently repeat, "The Lord will protect you," over and over again during each service. Emmanuel Roldown Caton grew into a swarthy and ruggedly handsome man with a head full of jet black hair. While in Wellfleet, he met and courted Jemima Atkins. The two were married January 14, 1823 in Provincetown by the Reverend Epiphras Kibbe Cook in the Methodist religion. They lived in Provincetown, where Emmanuel was known for wearing thick brass hoops in both ears, something that he had acquired during his time on the pirate ship. On February 26, 1888, Emmanuel Caton, the first Portuguese person to settle in Provincetown, drew his last breath. I made this using a description of him that I found, and I think it's pretty close. I want to finish with a poem called My Provincetown. As the far curved edge of the cape, where the land loosens its grip on the continent, the woods stand quietly behind the dunes, their pine needles whispering in the wind. In the forest, the sunlight filters through pitch pine and oak, and the earth smells of salt and sand, as if the ocean itself once rested there. The dunes rise like sleeping giants, soft mountains shaped by restless winds. They move slowly through the years, carrying stories older than memory. Here, the sand of the dunes shift and sigh beneath the sky. Beyond them, the water waits. In the wide blue arms of the Atlantic, the tide breathes in and out, like the slow rhythm of the earth itself. Fishing boats trace familiar paths, gulls wheel above in the wind, and the sea keeps its endless watch. Morning arrives in quiet silver light, spilling across the harbor. By evening, the sky burns with color, and the dunes glow gold before fading into shadow. Here, the woods remember, the dunes wander, and the water never forgets. And at the very tip of the cape, Provincetown stands, a place where land, wind, and sea have learned to live together in the long, patient language of time. Thank you.
Lisa never disappoints. That was beautiful. Wow. You made that drawing, Lisa?
Huh?
You did that drawing?
What I did was I took the description of him and I was playing with AI, which I don't use. I'm kind of afraid to use it. But for an image, I just plugged in what it said and this is what came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I took the exact description of him.
You know, every year we do this, and I think about all the people walking down Commercial Street, and look what they're missing. Look what they're missing. Look what we got here today. Lisa, Gabby, Peter, Mel, Billy. Get everybody? Yeah. I always come away from this richer for all the memories and all the beautiful words, and I thank you, and I thank you for including me. But thank you all for coming, and I hope people stick around and talk to these interesting presenters here. But thanks again, and happy Portuguese Festival.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
thanks for being here.